And welcome to our webinar on how to be thoughtfully fit and have the strength to create a life you love. I thank you for joining me today. I am Darcy Loma, and I am a master certified coach and a consultant, and I launched my full-time company in January of 2013, which focuses on creating high-performing and thoughtfully fit people and teams. And in addition to doing consulting and motivational workshops and keynotes and coaching, my most important life role is being a mom to two daughters, Josie and Jaden. You can see them here down at the Union Terrace at UW-Madison. Joining me also today is Deb McKenzie, who is on my team. And you can see the little black box because she is going to be monitoring the chat room today and taking care of all the technical side, because this is the first time we've done a webinar. And thankfully, Deb is here getting everything set up, because as we're doing this, we're learning as we go. So we appreciate your patience if there's any technical glitches. Deb is the coaching coordinator on my team. So when someone reaches out saying, I think I wanna work with a coach, I wanna get unstuck in my life, or I want to figure out how to reach a new goal, Deb will talk with you to identify your personality, your style, and match you with one of the coaches on my team, so you can do a free exploratory session. Just trying to get the camera right there. And then she's a VP of everything. So anything that we do in this company, you name it, Deb has her hands in it. And so if you have any questions or comments, or want to make any remarks in the chat room, Deb's going to be monitoring that. And then at the end of the call, we'll have some time for Q&A. Want to make sure that you have a chance to print the handout. It's in the chat box. And that will be an opportunity for you to follow along. And there'll be some exercises as we're going through the webinar. Won't have a lot of time to work through the exercises. And so that's why I want to give you a chance to start them. And then ideally you can continue, and you can watch the replay again, and you can go deeper into some of the self-reflection. Thoughtfully Fit is a model that I've been working on for a couple of years, and it's all about how to coach yourself to a life you love. What I started to realize is that previous clients were coming back to me and saying, you know, Darcy, I was going to reach out to you because I was stuck, or I had a problem and I didn't know what to do. And I thought, wait a minute, what would Darcy say? She'd ask me some questions. And what would she ask me? She'd ask me, what do I really want? And what's hard about this? And how can I overcome those obstacles? And I just want to share with you, Darcy, that I answered those powerful questions and I got the results, and I'm letting you know that I got unstuck. I figured out what the next steps were. I coached myself. And to me, that is just the ultimate reward. And so I started to think about, how can I teach other people to be able to have access to the ability to coach yourself to a life that you love? And that's what Thoughtfully Fit is all about. Let me give you an overview of where we're going to be going today in our agenda. Now, coaching is all about you create new awareness and then you create new actions. And so today we're going to start by talking about, why would you care about having the strength to create a life that you love? Why would you care about being able to say no and to set boundaries? And we're going to talk about what is Thoughtfully Fit and how does Thoughtfully Fit help you to do that. And then we're going to go through 3 steps that are going to help you to create a life that you love. And then we'll transition into creating some action. We're going to talk about what's your one thing. One of the things when I'm working with individual coaching clients that's powerful is at the end of every coaching session, we say, what's your action item? What are you going to do between now and the next session? And by breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, there's greater chances of success. So I want you to be thinking about, as we go throughout today's call, what's your action item? And then we'll end by talking about, if you want more support, if you say, wow, this was great, and I realized that I need more, I'm going to share more with you about my coaching team, the 6 coaches that I have, and about an opportunity that I have coming up in Madison for women, small group coaching, that's on September 6th. And then we will open it up for Q&A. Deb, so if you have questions as it's going, feel free to write them in the chat box, and Deb will share those at the end so that I can answer them. Our plan is to go until 1:30. So if there's any questions that we don't get a chance to answer, we'll follow up with you afterwards, either individually, or if we think there's a question that everybody would benefit from, we'll share that answer with everybody. The other thing I want to share with you I'm excited about is that for attending today live, this webinar, you have an opportunity to win a free coaching strategy session. It's a $650 value. It's phenomenal, and it'll be with one of the 6 coaches on my coaching team. And we're going to notify the winner within the next week after today's call. So thanks for joining live. All right, let's get down to business. Who can relate? I'm so busy. We have become a culture that glorifies busy. All the things that are expected of us, work, family, chores, volunteering, kids, pets, has become overwhelming for many of us. And our society is glorifying being busy. Now, I know this all too well. I launched my business in, well, it was January of 2013 that I launched full-time. And I told my family at the time that I'm going to go gonzo, because everything I had read said that the first 2 years with a new entrepreneur, new small business, 2 years, the majority of businesses fail. So I did that. I went crazy. And I created this really fulfilling, satisfying, abundant business. And then I woke up. It was December of 2014. I went to Germany for 2 weeks for vacation, and I got back and I was completely, utterly overwhelmed. And my assistant could see it was more severe than just the normal, I'm feeling busy. So she cleared my calendar for 3 weeks over the holidays so that I could just relax and unplug. Well, you would think that that would have been just what I needed, and it wasn't. I was still exhausted, and I found that I was using caffeine and sugar as a way to keep my energy up. I wasn't making good choices. So I decided in January of that year to do a cleanse. And I worked with a certified nutritionist in Denver, and she had this private Facebook group with 25 people. And the first week, everybody felt miserable, because in this cleanse, you're giving up sugar, caffeine, alcohol, gluten, anything, basically just having fruits and vegetables and lean protein and whole grains and beans. Well, the first week, as you might imagine, everybody felt miserable, as did I. Headaches from caffeine withdrawal and sugar withdrawal. But what was interesting is about like day 8 or 9, I started reading all these comments on the private Facebook page saying that people were feeling great. They had more energy than ever before. And I didn't. And so week 2 came and went, week 3, and I never started to feel better. And so I reached out to the nutritionist, and we dug deep. And what we found out totally shocked me. We discovered that I had stage 3 adrenal fatigue syndrome. That my body was so overwhelmed with stress, it was literally shutting down. And of course, I was doing the opposite. As I was getting, less efficient and more tired, I thought I got to work harder, I got to focus more. And I'm wondering if you can relate to that. If you can relate to being so busy. And I want you to think about, what's your busy? My busy was starting a new business. What is it that fills your days and your time? And I'm going to invite you, if you look at your handout, which I'm just going to pull mine up here, on page 1, you can see a box that gives you a chance to reflect. And I'd like to ask you to just jot down in that box all of the things that fill your days and your week. Anything that you can think of, whether it's chores, work, exercise, I want you to write it down. And then in the right-hand column, Identify on a scale of 1 to 10, how much joy does each activity bring you? And as you're doing that, I'm going to invite you to continue throughout the webinar to keep adding things as you think of it. What is it that fills your days and your weeks? And how much joy does it bring you? And my hope is that we're going to give you a chance to pause today to think, to create some new awareness, knowing full well that there's probably a lot more deeper reflection that you can do after the webinar. We're just giving you a chance to get started. So I'll give you just a moment to jot down your ideas. What fills your day? Now, somehow we are led to believe that busy is good. Our world is so, when you go around, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, you think you're busy. And oh, I'm busy. I'm overwhelmed. And the flip side of that is that not busy means we're lazy. And what I'm going to invite you to consider today is something completely different than that. That being busy is not good. And it's not lazy when you're not busy. So when we think about it, what are we so busy doing? Well, if you're anything like me, you're busy doing everything that's asked of you. I know I was. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to feel good, and it felt good when I could say yes. And the things I was being asked to do were really important things. But what I realized is that the level of joy and fulfillment that I was having by doing everything that was asked of me by everyone else, I had no time or space to do the things that brought me joy and fulfillment. And as we're going throughout the webinar, feel free to jot in the chat box, what are the activities, what are you recognizing about that you're busy doing? What brings you joy and what doesn't bring you joy? So that you can share as you're creating new awareness today. And it was in January of 2015, when I got overwhelmed and realized I had adrenal fatigue syndrome, that I was introduced to this concept of essentialism. Now, this is a book by Greg McGowan. And in it, he talks about, I'm just going to pull up my notes so I get the actual definition here. He talks about essentialism is a systematic discipline for discerning what's absolutely essential and then eliminating everything else that's not, so that we can make the highest possible contribution towards the things that matter in our life. Well, this became my whole focus in 2015, to create more white space, to just identify what was most essential to me and start to have the courage and the strength to say no to those things that weren't. So in other words, if we simplify it, it's all about prioritizing what's most important to you and then simplifying your life to be able to honor those priorities. Now, I call this being thoughtfully fit. When you are thoughtfully fit, you are mindful of your own self, your life, your choices, and you're mindful with others. And when you're thoughtfully fit, you have more peace, inner peace, greater joy, more success, stronger relationships. And so when we look at being thoughtfully fit, this is a model that I've been creating and working on for the last couple of years. And there are 6 practices. And these practices are essentially what I found when I started to dig deep and look at the hundreds of clients that I've worked with, the thousands of hours that I've worked with individual coaching clients. What gets in the way of living a life you love? And these are the themes. And there's 3 internal themes, practices, and 3 external. And what we're going to do today is look at the core. And so you can see in the middle of the model is the core. You have to pause, think, and then act. No matter where you're at in your life, whether you're trying to figure out why you're stuck or why you're in conflicts with someone else, you have to pause and think about what's hard about this. What do I really want? What's getting in the way? And then you act from that place of new awareness. And when you do that, you're coaching yourself. Because how many of us don't pause and think, we just act? We just jump into step 3 and then later think, ugh, that didn't go so well. So learning to coach yourself is all about being able to create new awareness and then create new actions after that. So when you pause and you think, the thinking stage is creating new awareness, and then you create new actions. And so today we're focusing just on this internal practice of strength. This is one of the 6 practices of being thoughtfully fit. Now, this isn't about physical strength. This is about mental strength. This is about having the strength to make the decisions that best serve you in your life. So instead of being in default mode and on autopilot, it's being able to pause and think about what's needed in the moment, and then having the strength to consciously choose your actions based on that new awareness of what you want in your life, of what you need. And what I find in working with individuals and coaching clients is there is one big number 1 obstacle that gets in the way of us being able to consciously choose how we want to live our lives. Being able to say no to things that don't bring us joy, that aren't essential, and being able to say yes to those things that would help create a life you love. Anyone want to guess what that number 1 obstacle is? Feel free, jot it in the chat box if you have some ideas. Number 1 obstacle is needing to make others happy, is putting a focus on other people and what they need to be happy, and not discerning what is most important for you to be happy. And so if you're anything like I am, where I was at is everything that was asked of me, I was saying yes to because I wanted people to be happy. Now, also, what I want to share with you as we're going throughout this webinar today is that for some of you, that might be the stage of life that you're in. And so, for instance, when I was in those first 2 years of building my business, I said yes a lot intentionally because I wanted to be able to practice, to be able to develop my speeches, to be able to get testimonials. So that was the stage of life that I was in. I could not have really heard this message that I'm sharing with you today 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. So being thoughtfully fit is all about creating awareness for yourself. You're the expert. And when you look at this obstacle, making others happy, what you come to realize is that if everything is important, then nothing is. If someone reaches out and says, hey, can you take on this new project at work? Can you come and volunteer at the Little League game? Can you be on this new committee? If everything is important, you're saying yes to everything in your life, then nothing is. So the question that I have for you is, how's that working for you? I know for me, when I woke up in January of 2015, feeling sick with headaches and no energy, it wasn't working. And so the concept here that I want to share with you is that you don't do more and more and more and more and say yes to everything. Instead, you replace more with better. Because the opposite of busy is not doing nothing. It's not being lazy. The opposite of busy is being intentional. It's being thoughtful in your life. And indeed, when we look at how to be thoughtfully fit and how to schedule your life so that you can create a life that you love, there's 3 quick steps. You have to determine what's most important to you. And then you do what's most important to you and you let go of everything else. So let's take a look at 3 thoughtful steps that might help you to do that, to be more mindful in your own life so that you can choose and prioritize what's most important, what's most essential for you. Step 1, we're going to look at is control your calendar. Step 2 is value your values. And step 3 is say no. And so as we're going throughout this, in these next 3 steps, feel free to jot in the chat box. Which of these do you struggle with? What questions do you have? And after we go through the steps, I'm going to open it up for Q&A so I can hopefully address some of the things and the struggles that you're having. Let's start with step number 1. Control your calendar. Let me just check in with you if any of these questions sound familiar. Where did the summer go? Can anybody relate to that? Oh my God, how did all this stuff get on my calendar? I don't have a free weekend for 3 months. I can absolutely relate to that because my calendar used to control me because everything that came in, I held as important and I said yes to. And in January of 2015, my whole intention for 2015 was to create more white space so that I could focus truly on what's most essential to me. And what I found, number 1, absolutely for me, that's most essential are my daughters. No question. I'm a full-time single parent, 100% custody. And so every decision that I make always goes through the lens of how does this impact my daughters and my family. And Deb knows, and the people on my team and my coaches know that balance is one of the top core values of our business. And so when we're creating our strategic plan and we're looking at new work that's coming in, we always are putting it through the lens of what's the impact on my family and my daughters. And I say no to a lot of work because I don't want to be away from them. I don't want to be living in an airplane and in hotels. So I've designed my life around what's most essential. And here's what's key. In order for me to be the best mom that I can be, I have to be the best me that I can be. And so the other thing that I hold is absolutely essential is a focus on my health and my fitness and my wellness. And so for the girls and I, you can see here, we've got on the one picture, you probably can't read it, but it says Mile Swim Champions. So we go to this summer family camp every summer, and the girls and I do the mile swim, and the girls have started to do it with me the last couple of years. And we try to focus on how to be healthy as a family. This last weekend, the girls did their 4th annual triathlon. This weekend, they're gonna come and cheer for me, my triathlon. And indeed, I've been doing triathlons for the last 18 years because that is essential to me to be healthy so that I can do these fun activities and I can be present for my girls. But you know what's continually asked of me? Darcy, how do you have time for that? How do you have time to train? Now, it may be a different version for you. It may be, how do you have time to sit in the morning and meditate? Or someone saying, I would never have time to not have a morning full of meetings. What is absolutely essential to focus on is that you choose to make time for it. It's that simple. It's not easy, and I struggled for decades, but it is that simple. You identify what's important to you, and then you control your calendar. You have to choose to make time for it. Now, this is a question I have for you. Would you rather let others control your calendar? And would you rather have your days filled with things that are important to everyone else? Or would you rather have the strength to control your calendar, to be able to choose and prioritize the things that bring the greatest fulfillment to you, that are most essential? So the question I have for you is, you get to decide. Do you control your calendar? Or does your calendar control you? I put all of my activities, the girls' recitals, their sports activities, my triathlon team practices are on my calendar first. And my team has access to my family calendar, and we don't schedule over that. Those come in first. They used to be an afterthought. So there's a secret that I want to share with you, though, that you already have control. You might be sitting here saying, Darcy, well, yeah, that's nice that you can do that. I can't. You don't know my life. You don't know my boss. You don't know my family. Well, I'm going to say hogwash to that. And that's tough love, because you do have control. If a crisis happened tomorrow, you would clear your calendar without a second thought. Let's share a story about that. 2 years ago in August, I got a call from my dad. He was crying, and he said my mom was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It just absolutely was the hardest conversation, and I was crying. It was terrible. And I hung up the phone, and I drove to my meeting that morning with my financial planner. And I got there, and I apologized because my face was red and puffy. I was crying, and I said, I'm so sorry I'm late. Apologize if I can't really focus as well as I can. I just got news that my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And my financial planner, John, said, oh, what are you doing here? And I said, what do you mean? He said, why are you here? And I said, well, we've had this appointment on the calendar for months. He said, get out of here. Go be with your mom. It was a Thursday morning. It was the best gift he could have given me, because that was most essential. So I dropped everything. I called my assistant and I said, cancel my meetings for today and tomorrow and Monday. I'm driving to northern Minnesota. And this picture was taken at the hospital Monday afternoon after we met with the cardiologist, and we were having a coffee in the cafeteria at the hospital before I drove back to Madison. And I'm thrilled to say that my mom is doing incredibly well, and that we have made conscious choices and decisions to prioritize as much time as we can get with my family, with my parents. They're coming again this weekend for my daughter's birthday. So if a crisis happened and you could drop everything and you would deal with it, why wait? Why not take control now? Why not make those things that are most essential to you important and prioritize them on your calendar so that you control your calendar? And that's what I'm going to share with you on the, let's see here, page 2 of the handout. You can see an activity to control your calendar. So I'm going to invite you to reflect for a moment on where do you need to take control of your calendar. What items from that list on page 1 are no longer meaningful or fun or essential for you? What can you let go of? And again, this is an opportunity for you to pause and think and reflect. I'm going to keep moving on in our agenda so that we can honor, probably a lot of you are hitting the pause button and on your lunch break. I want to invite you to continue to think about this question and reflect on it and journal on it afterwards. And if you have ideas of what you need to let go of, feel free to type those in the chat box as well. So that brings us to step 2, value your values. This is just a simple yet really difficult question. What's essential to you? That's what your values are. Your values are what's essential, what's most important to you. Now, for some of you, you value fitness. Some value fun. Maybe you value achievement or recognition. Maybe you value nature and the outdoors. It's all about identifying what's most important to you. Because in order to control your calendar, the second step, you have to know what's most important to you so you know what to put on your calendar. My entire schedule shifted and changed in 2015 when I got sick and I was overwhelmed, and I started to take control and to identify what's most essential. What are those values? And so want to have you identify for yourself, what are your values? And on your handout on page 3, I'm going to share some questions with you, and you can jot down your responses and take some notes, because what I find in working with women in the small group coaching, for instance, is that a lot of them come and say, I don't know what my values are. I don't know what's most important to me. And so these are some questions that might help you to identify what's most important for you. Because if you can change your questions, you can change your outcome. And indeed, that's what it is to coach yourself to a life you love. When you are pausing and thinking, you are asking yourself different questions. And when you have new awareness based on different questions, you have access to different actions that can align with your values and with what's most essential to you. So let's take a look. First question. What do you enjoy? When's the last time you've stopped to really just think about, what do I enjoy? And if it's hard to think about it because it's been so long, feel free to think about, what did I used to enjoy? Maybe when I was a child or in college, or when I gave myself time and permission to not be so busy. Second question. What do you care about? Like, what do you really care about? The causes, the people that are near and dear to your heart. Chances are, when you care deeply about something, there's a value there. And the third is, what are you good at? A lot of times when we're doing things we're good at, we feel more joy. We're doing things that we value, that are important to us, and we're good at them. And if you answer these questions, you can sort of, if you think about that being a container, a lid, and you open up the lid and you look underneath, the answers to the questions point to your values, to what's most important, to what do you need to prioritize in your life. And so at the bottom half of page 3 is a place for you to reflect on these answers and identify and brainstorm your top values. For me, professional growth, personal development, family, fitness, those are my top values. It's not becoming a multi-million-dollar business. It's having an impact. I so love being able to connect with people like you who have hit the pause button on your life to come, to show up, to invest in yourself and think about what's working in my life, what's not, and then hopefully to create some new actions. That's what I value. That's why I do webinars like this and my Facebook Live, Thoughtfully Fit Thursdays, and write blog articles and newsletters to share, because that's what I value. I love helping people to learn and grow and create a life that they love. I've always loved that. That's what I've designed my life and my business around. So identify what your top values are. And it's okay if you don't know in this moment. This might be something that you take the handout afterwards and you go to a friend or a spouse and you say, hey, can we work through this together? Or you take the recording and have them listen to it so that you can dig deeper. And what that allows you to do when you value your values is to truly honor your priorities. It's about not squeezing time into your calendar, into whatever time is left. Oh, when am I going to get my workout in? Oh, I scheduled a meeting. I can't go to Josie's hockey game. Instead of squeezing time in, you first fill your calendar with those things that are most important to you, with your values, your priorities. So you control your calendar based on what you value most. And that brings us to step 3, which is where probably for myself and most of the clients I work with, this takes the greatest amount of strength to be able to say no. That mental strength to have the courage. And when you're thoughtfully fit, you're mindful of how you say no and considerate of how you deliver that message to someone else so that you aren't doing damage and you're honoring the relationship. And indeed, for me, saying no transformed my life. Because so I was working for 12 years as the director of Senator Cole's office. And when he announced he was not going to be seeking re-election, I had to figure out what was next for me. And the senator came to me and offered that I come and work for him. At the time, he owned the Milwaukee Bucks, the NBA team. And I wasn't really passionate about that, but I didn't have the courage to say no. And so when I would talk to the senator about it, I'd say, you know, I don't really think that you want me, Senator. I don't know anything about professional basketball. Oh, you don't need to know anything about that, Darcy. You're good with people. You have a strong work ethic. Well, let me think about it. So 4 or 5 months would go by and I'd say, well, Senator, I'm not a salesperson. If you want me to go out and to try to sell sponsorships and you know, access to the box, I don't have that skill set. Darcy, you don't need that skill set. You're good with people. You've got, you know, he just kept on, you know, going against what I was saying because he really believed in me. Well, finally, I was working with a life coach. And when I went back to her and told her I had this offer, she said, wow, great. How does that feel? And I said, honestly, she said, well, yeah. And I said, I just want to throw up. I don't want to work for a professional basketball team. I love the senator. I think it's great, but it's not what I want. And I remember her saying, well, then that's your get out of fear card. You need to say no. And I was scared to say no. I went back to the senator and I said no. And this is where I truly had an aha moment. Because guess what his response was? Why didn't you say that? Oh my God, okay. What do you want to do? Oh my gosh, he wasn't angry, he wasn't upset. What's your passion, Darcy? How can I support you? All of a sudden I realized that I was making up a lot of stories for decades about why I couldn't say no. So let's just take a look at, maybe some of these reasons will resonate with you. And if you've got more reasons, write them in the chat box. Why is saying no hard? We don't want to let others down. We want people to like us. We want to avoid difficult conversations because we're being asked to do good things. Volunteering for the sports team or being on a new board of directors or getting a new work assignment are good things. That's why it's hard to say no. But the challenge I have for you is to leave other people's baggage. Don't pick it up. Let it go. Even if that baggage is really pretty, or if it's filled with diamonds, if you are constantly taking on other people's baggage and saying yes, it's going to weigh you down. So when you think about this, if you are really not focusing on what's most essential to you, how do you have the time and energy to carry your own if you're carrying everyone else's? And this is what I want you to know. Saying no is not vengeful or punitive. It doesn't mean that you don't want to do what's being asked of you. Saying no thoughtfully, considerately, creates space so that you can say yes to what's most essential. And that's the key to thoughtfully fit scheduling. You have to commit to yourself. Because you don't need a reason to not do something. You need a reason to do something. That was a lesson that was hard for me to learn. And so this is all about setting boundaries, healthy boundaries. And if you don't know what I mean about boundaries, because it took me a long time to figure it out, I've got a couple of videos on my Facebook Live page about boundaries. Because I've had people come back time and time again. How do you set boundaries? Since I talk in those live Thoughtfully Fit Thursdays videos about how do you set boundaries. And essentially, it's about valuing your time and needs as much or more than others. And it's about helping others to know what your limits are. This is what's okay. This is what's not okay. This is my boundary. And if you don't set a boundary, how is someone else supposed to know what's okay or what's not okay? Indeed, that's the definition of a boundary. It's a line that marks the limits of an area. So in order to say no and to live a thoughtfully fit life and have the strength to create a life you love, it requires being able to say no, to have the strength to make difficult, challenging choices. Because sometimes you need to just let go of fear and guilt, worrying about disappointing others in order to say no. So there's two parts to say no. Part one, you have to justify your decision. To who? Yourself. To nobody else. So you don't ask, is this important? Or is this a good way to spend my time? Because of course the things we're being asked to do are important. They're good things. Instead, you have to ask, is what I'm being asked to do aligned with what's most essential for me? And then the second part of saying no, you say no. It's that simple. You just have to learn to say no without explaining yourself. And if that's hard, as it was for me, and it's a learning curve, it gets easier, I'll tell you that, the more you do it. There's a couple ways that I'm going to share with you as we're closing out this, the content for this webinar. We're going to transition into questions in a moment. There's a couple of ways that you can say no if it's hard to say no without explaining yourself. You can say no and show interest and curiosity. Oh, thanks so much for the invitation to go with you Friday night. I can't make it, but gosh, that sounds like a great band. Who are you going with? Or who's the opening act? You can say no later. Buy yourself some time. Let me think about it. That's one that I still regularly use. And then I go back to my team and I go back and talk to Deb, and we think about how does this align with my values and what's most essential and our priorities for our strategic plan. And you can offer an alternative. Oh, I'd love to be on the board of directors, but I can't at this time. My daughters are young and they need me home. But you know what? I am happy to send the word out to my friends to see if somebody else is interested. Or I'm happy to write out a check because I believe in your mission. So, activity on your handout, top of page 4, is to say no. What will you have the strength to say no to in order to create more space for those things you love, to honor your values, and to what's most essential to you? And with that, we're going to transition into creating action. So we started with creating awareness. Now with the new awareness that you're having, what action do you want to take? So we talked about, just to review, 3 thoughtful steps to having the strength to creating a life you love. Control your calendar, value your values, and say no. Want you to think now, what's your one thing? This is a great book if you haven't read it, by Gary Keller. It talks about just identifying if there was one thing that you were going to do in order to really have the strength to redesign your life. What would that be? And there's a place on the handout on the bottom of page 4 for you to identify what's one thing that you want to commit to help you align your life with your values and your passion and what's most important to you. Because that's where the value of being able to coach yourself, when I'm working with individual clients, when we're doing the small group coaching, what's powerful and what makes it work is having an action and accountability to be able to do what you say you're going to do. So I invite you to also think about what kind of support and accountability can you design for yourself. And if you want more support and more accountability, I want to spend a couple of minutes just sharing with you some ways that you might build in more support for yourself, more accountability. So you may be just where you are, which is perfect. You coach yourself to a life you love, and you keep reading and identifying what's important for you, being mindful, making conscious choices, having strength. Maybe you read the newsletters, my blogs, and you keep working on your own. And you make it to a point where you realize, I need more support. So one of the things that you may want to do is work with a coach. Now, I have worked with a coach oh well, gosh, probably I've had maybe, I don't even know, I should go back and count, 6, 8, 10, maybe a dozen coaches over the last decade or two. Life coaches, executive coaches, wellness coaches. I've had a parenting coach. I've had a relationship coach. And I've got 6 coaches on my team who are just incredible. And they work with people like you who want more support and accountability to be able to create a life that you love. So why work with a coach? Well, first of all, if you want some individual personalized attention that's focused on your goals and your vision and your dreams. If you want support to be able to overcome those obstacles and those saboteurs that get in the way, having an individual life coach, just like with me when I brought to my coach saying, oh, it was so heavy on me that how I can't say no to the senator. And she helped me realize that indeed I had to say no. And I haven't looked back. I have no regrets. And had I not had her support and the accountability to actually follow through on saying no, I don't know if I would have had the courage to do it. And that's the third reason. Working with a life coach helps give you accountability to be able to do the things that you say you want to do to get where you want to go in your life. And so on my team, I have 6 coaches. And the cool thing is they all have individual specialties, from executive coaching, business and leadership coaching, to creativity and spirituality and wellness coaching. And Deb on my team, as I introduced her at the beginning of the webinar, she schedules an individual call with every person who wants to reach out and explore working with a coach to find out what are your goals and your personality and your style. And she matches you with one of the coaches on my team so that you can then do a free exploratory session to be able to see, is this the right fit? Is this the right coach for me? So if you're curious about that and you want to check it out, email coach@darcyloma.com and schedule a call with Deb so that she can learn more and you can see if this is something that might help you to reach your goals and to really live a thoughtful life. The second thing I want to share with you is something that I'm really excited about and passionate about, and that's my small group coaching for women. I've had this for the last 5 years. When I started my business, I started small group coaching. And for those of you who are attending the webinar or listening to the recording, you can get a $50 discount for attending. And you have to use the discount code webinar, and that's on the screen coming up when you register. Let me tell you a little bit more about why I love small group coaching for women. First of all, this is a supportive environment to help you identify and achieve your goals with other women who are at a place in their life where they want to be surrounded by supportive, positive people. It is a place to create deep connection with amazing women. We create a very safe space, and the vulnerability and the support and the connection that come in the small group coaching, I don't see it happen anywhere else in my life. It's just incredible. And it's cheaper than working with an individual life coach. So if you're like, oh, I really want to work with a coach, but at this stage in my life, that's not an investment that I can make, maybe small group coaching is a step for you. So, and then the other thing is to have fun. We have a lot of fun in small group coaching. Let me just share a little bit more about how we structure it. The first session is September 6th, and it goes through December. So it's 4 months. It's a phenomenal way to end your year strong. How many times you start out the year? Who can even remember what your resolutions were for 2017? Way back on January 1st. This is a chance for you to not wait until January of 2018 to re-engage and reactivate your intentions, your resolutions for this year in a supportive, engaging, accountable group to help you create a life that you love. Small group coaching is the first and third Wednesdays each month in September through December from 6 to 8 p.m. In Madison, Wisconsin. There is a private accountability group that you get to work with. The coach on my team, a certified professional coach, and there's a private Facebook group where you have additional support and connection and accountability in between these sessions. So if you're intrigued with a small group for coaching for women, or you know someone who is, I would ask you to please share with them, and feel free to share the discount code. You can get $50 off if you put the promo code webinar when you sign up. And you can find all of the details and the link on my website. If you go to darcyloma.com, the very first banner is small group for coaching for women, and you can click on that. And again, it begins on September 6th. So we're going to now transition and open it up to question and answers. Before we do that, I want to just remind you that if you don't prioritize your life, believe me, someone else will. I thank you for spending this time with me over our lunch hour today. I want to remind you that we are going to be choosing the winner. For those of you who joined our live webinar today, we're going to be giving away a free coaching strategy session. You had to have attended live. It's with one of the professional coaches on my team, and we'll be announcing the winner. We'll be sending out an email within by the end of this week. So at this point, we've got 10 minutes left that I want to just open it up. I'm going to check with Deb and see what kind of questions you have that have come up throughout the webinar.
All right. I've got a couple questions so far. The first is from Jamie, and Jamie asks, work is the hardest calendar to clear. Any suggestions?
Yeah, so work oftentimes can be the hardest, although it's interesting when I work with people, I would say there's some people who find it easier to set boundaries at work and harder in the personal life. If you find that work is harder for you, chances are what's going to help is being able to identify what is it that's hard and be able to have a courageous conversation with your boss, with your colleagues, with whatever the source is of where you're finding struggle, and being able to say no. And framing that conversation through the lens of what's the impact on the organization, on the company, on the nonprofit, on the school district, wherever it is you're working. Because if you are spread so thin and you can't say no and you're overwhelmed, chances are you are not at your best. And if you're not at your best, you're not going to be having the impact that you need to have in your role. So it might come down to identifying, setting some clear boundaries, having some courageous conversations. When someone comes to you, whether it's your boss or a colleague, and says, hey, I've got another project, I need this done by Friday, instead of just saying yes, 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 because it's asked of you, it may be saying, okay, great, so this is a priority, this needs to be done by Friday. I've got these other 4 projects that I'm working on that also are due this week, wondering which of these, knowing that, you know, that they all can't get done, which do you want me to prioritize? What's most important? And take some time to have that conversation. And for some of us, it does take courage. And probably, I'm going to guess, Jamie, for you, what might be hard about saying no at work, which was for me, is that I didn't think I had the abilities to say no because it's my job. And indeed, when I started to be able to identify with my boss what was hard and where I was at and how overwhelmed I was and how unsustainable it was, she didn't want me to go off the deep end and then quit because I'm exhausted. She wanted me to have joy and fulfillment. And so that's one tip that I have for you, or maybe there was a couple tips in there for you to bring back if it's hard at work. Thanks for that question, Jamie.
All right, our next question is from Trisha. I have to chuckle a little here. She said, 3 people interrupted my webinar today at work. Any suggestions besides screaming at people?
Oh, Trisha, I love it. 3 people interrupted you during your webinar. I get it. So this is a place where setting boundaries is key. And if you haven't read, there's a little book called The Myth of Multitasking. If you haven't read that book, I'm going to encourage you to read it, because one of the things, when I was working for Senator Cole and I had an open door policy, I thought that was good. I thought I was a good boss. But what I realized is I constantly was having people, you got a minute? Hey, Darce. And I could never get in the groove because I was getting interrupted. when I read that book, and ironically, my boss at the time, Joanne, gave it to me, what I did is changed from an open door policy to having office hours. So I did two things, office hours and having regular meetings with those people who I needed to work with. And for some of them, it was a daily meeting, for some it was weekly. And instead of being available nonstop, 24/7, whenever, I created a boundary and I created a structure. And what's interesting is what I found is, so with some of the employees who we set, every Tuesday at 2:30, we'd have a meeting. By Tuesday at 2:30, they'd come in saying, oh, I had all these questions. Well, I guess I got them all answered. Well, there's one more that I have. And so it created more efficiency. So I think one of the keys, Tricia, is to identify what's the source of the interruptions and how can you create some healthy boundaries so that you can get in a flow. And maybe you chunk out your day and maybe you say, from 10 to 12, I'm returning calls, or I'm going to be working on this report. And from 12 to 2, I'm returning phone calls, or I've got open office, so if somebody comes in and interrupts you, say, you know what, I'm just working on something. Are you available at noon or at 1 o'clock? And allow yourself permission to just stay focused. Any more questions?
Yeah, we got a few. Our next one is from Debbie, and she asks, do you have to live in Madison to work with a life coach?
Oh, great question, Debbie. So no, you don't. One of the things that's great about coaching, as a matter of fact, I think every coach I've worked with, I'm just thinking, I think 100% of those coaches I've worked with have been remote by phone. I have had coaches in California and New York and Minnesota. And all of the coaches on our team also work with people all over the country, actually even internationally. Now with Skype and WhatsApp and all these other things, it's easy to even coach internationally. And so when you are in Madison or in the region where the coaches are, most of my coaches are here in the Midwest, ideally that initial discovery session is done in person. If you're not in Madison, which a lot of our clients aren't, then you can do that by Skype, by Zoom. You can do that even by phone. Some people just prefer old-fashioned. And once you get into the weekly sessions for coaching, after that initial discovery session sets the foundation for the coaching and helps you identify what are the primary focus areas you want to work on. After that, all of the coaching is done by phone. And so it can be done virtually from wherever you are. Thanks for that question, Debbie.
All right, next question is from Jamie. Again, I think she has a follow-up to her first one. Jamie asks, success is mistaken with doing as much as possible. How can you mentally get over that myth and find peace with what new success looks like?
So I'm going to reiterate or have you repeat that. So if success is equated with accomplishments.
Yes, doing as much as you can. How do you mentally get over that myth and find peace with what a new success looks like?
Okay, great question, Jamie. So here's what I want to remind you of. And I won't even remind you because I didn't say it yet. So I'm going to say it. In coaching, whether you're working with a coach or doing small group coaching or you're coaching yourself to a life you love, you are the expert in your life. So for some people, accomplishing a lot, doing a lot is a definition of success. And I'd say probably for me, it used to be. If you had told me 10 years ago that I would be where I am now with a whole different definition of what success looks like in my life, I would have said you were crazy. 10 years ago, I was working full-time for Senator Herb Kohl. I was the president of Wisconsin Women in Government. I was doing my master's degree in organization development. I was writing my master's thesis on life coaching. And I was doing all of that while I had a newborn and a 17-month-old. It was insane. But for me at that time, that was part of my definition of success. I just didn't know better. Now, today, that is not how I define success. I define success by how often do I get to go to the pool with the kids and go for bike rides and connect with my daughters and make an impact with clients and have emails that come back saying, Darcy, I coached myself. You're going to be so happy. So how you get at peace with yourself, Jamie, is you start by identifying what is your definition of success. And if it is achievement and accomplishment, great, fine, there's no judgment. But you have to hold yourself as the expert instead of letting society define it for you. And here's the deal. What I found most surprising is when I finally got the courage and the strength to start to say no, I was shocked at how many times the response was not anger or, oh, you've let me down. It was, oh, Darcy, I commend you. I didn't expect that you'd say yes anyway, but I thought I'd ask. And how do you do that? How do you set boundaries? Because it seems like from your Facebook feed, you have a lot of fun in your life. So what's interesting is that when you can create and identify your value system, what's most important to you, and it might not be achievement or success, or maybe you define it differently, and then you can honor that, other people will honor it too. They just need to know what your boundaries are so that they can really honor them. Good question, Jamie. Thank you.
I have one last question, and it's from Katie, and it should be the last one.
Okay.
I am not working. Is small group coaching for me?
Great. Thanks for asking that question, Katie. So small group coaching is, well, it's for women. So men, someday I have a lot of women who say, oh, my husband needs this, my boss needs this. So maybe someday we'll do that. But right now, I just love the opportunity to create a safe space for women. And it is women who are working full time. It's women who are stay-at-home moms. It's women who have hit the pause button on their career and walked away from corporate America and are trying to figure out what's next. So absolutely, it's for you. The key is that you want to create some new awareness in your life so that you can create some change and identify some action items amongst a wonderful, supportive group of women who are vulnerable and compassionate and caring. That's all you need. So whether you are working or not working or at a nonprofit or corporate, doesn't make any difference as long as you want to create some new awareness in your life and create some new actions. The other thing I'll share with you is that the last small group coaching and this one are the first ones that we've used the Thoughtfully Fit model. So if you're curious about these 6 practices of what gets in the way, the themes, patterns about what gets in the way of living a life that you love, we're going to walk through all of those 6 practices, and we're going to have identified specific action items and homework in between each session. In addition, you will identify what are your finish line goals. What is it that you want to achieve by December so that we can all support you and help hold you accountable to what you want to do. So thanks for that question, Jamie. And was that the last one, Deb?
Well, we do have one more if you want to take the time.
Sure.
Let me find the question again.
No problem.
This one is from Jeannie. How can you make successful job changes in a current position without jeopardizing your employment?
How can you make successful job changes in your current position without jeopardizing your employment? So Jeannie, I'm curious if you're talking about internally in the same organization or externally, meaning you want to start looking for a different position. Do you have any sense?
Jeannie just chatted, and yes, it's internally.
Okay, so internally,
internally.
To be promoted, to do more. Say it again.
So she did confirm that it's internally, and basically she would like to have a job change with her current employer. I'm assuming to a different department. And how does she do that without jeopardizing her job? So if I switch from one department to another, how do I do that without jeopardizing my job? Yeah. And Jamie, chime in if I misstated any of that.
Yeah, good question, Jeannie. And that's one that I'll take a stab at giving sort of a bottom line answer that maybe will give hopefully some ideas and tips. And feel free to follow up with me if I don't quite hit the mark. One of the things, if you're looking internally at getting promoted and you don't want to burn any bridges, is to sit down, I mean, again, without knowing the political dynamics, but is to sit down with your boss, or if you have a mentor, to identify what your career goals are, what your trajectory is, what your success path looks like, and to state that, to have the courage to be able to say, hey, here's where I'd like to go. Here's what my dream is in this company or in this organization. And I know that, or I'm assuming that I'm a valued player here. But I also know that in order for me to stay fulfilled and passionate, that I want to make sure that we've got a plan of where we're going. Can we work through this together? Can we talk about it? In my mind, when I'm coaching individuals who are having the same type of issue, the more transparent you can be, the more authentic, the better. Now, having said that, there may be political dynamics that are at play that's not going to be the best route. And you know, if that's the case, then we can certainly have a follow-up conversation to what that might be. But ideally, what most people don't do is state boldly and courageously, here's where I want to go. How can you help me get there? What do you need from me? If ultimately in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, I want to be the VP of X at this company, where do you see my gaps? What resources do you have to help me fill those gaps? What kind of professional development will you fund or training? Or will you hire me an executive coach or a business coach or leadership coach so I can improve my skills and fill those gaps? And if you show that you are motivated and excited and that you don't want to burn bridges and that you are willing to create a transition plan and train the new person that would come into your role, chances are that you'd be like a role model employee. Because most organizations want that. They want you to want to be engaged and to keep working your way up. So hopefully that's helpful with a couple little tips and tricks. And if there's more, feel free to shoot me an email, Jeannie, and we can connect and I can go a little bit deeper with you. I want to just say thank you so much for joining me today for this webinar. If you can't tell, this is truly my passion. If you're interested in individual coaching or small group coaching, I certainly hope that you'll join us and follow up. Thanks so much. Take care.